The Knicks Game 3 collapse, there's drama with Rafael Devers, and I'm dreaming about the NBA draft lottery. It's all next on Gordon Damer on Sports. All right, off and running on episode 6 of Gordon Damer on Sports. Welcome in. How was everyone's weekend? How is everyone feeling? Knicks fans are yelling at their phone right now. How do you think we're feeling? We feel miserable. Well, we got a jam-packed pod today. Before we get into anything, though, first, please do me a favor, hit the subscribe button, like the episode, comment on the episode. You know, unlike J-Lo, podcast, any engagement is good engagement. So please engage in any way you can. On today's episode, the Rafael Devers situation in Boston is driving me nuts. The draft lottery is tonight, and there's a clear team to me that should absolutely win. We got 3 and out, some TV recommendations, a whole lot more, but we start with the headline. And the headline is the Knicks Game 3 was disgusting, but it was actually not the worst thing in the world. All right, we got a lot to talk about with that Knicks Game 3 performance. The Celtics get the game, get back in the series. I have some sub-headlines before we get to Game 3 that I want to hit on right off the bat. First off, and this has been a talking point basically the last 3 or 4 days, Game 3 of the Knicks-Celtics series was not a must-win game for the Knicks. What the hell are people talking about? The amount of supposed respected basketball people who said the Knicks Game 3 must win. Must win. It's a must-win for the Celtics, but it's also a must-win for the Knicks. It defies basic logic, and it defies basic math. It's a 7-game series. The Knicks are up 2-0. The Knicks could have lost Game 3 by 1,000 points. And at times, it felt like they were losing by 1,000 points. They could lose by 10,000, 1,000,000 points. They're still winning the series 2-1. The series is who gets to 4 wins first. Just simply, if the Knicks win the first 2 games, which they did, lose Game 3, but yet win Game 4 and are up 3-1, 1 win away from the Eastern Conference Finals, you're telling me they're doomed because they didn't win Game 3? It makes no sense. The Knicks had to get one of the next 2 games, either Game 3 or Game 4, and get a 3-1 series lead. Just like when they went to Boston, I said, you got to win one of those first 2. I prefer 1, but 2 also works. Same situation here. I would have preferred Game 3, but it's not a must-win as long as you win Game 4. The fact they got both games in Boston means you just need one of the next 2. Again, I would have preferred Game 3 because then you have 4 cracks to close out the defending champs, but 3-1, any way you slice it is good. History is on your side. You got a pretty good chance of closing things out. I would even say Game 4 is not a must-win. It puts the series in far more doubt, but I'm not going to say, well, if you lose Game 4, you're definitely losing the series. You got to get to 3-2. Now, I do think Game 4 is pretty critical, but critical is not must-win. Game 4 is not must-win, and Game 3 certainly was not must-win. I get it. As soon as one game ends, people want to make it like that game is then going to carry over into the next game. Each game in the NBA playoffs, they reset the scoreboard, people. The next game, Game 4, they're going to start 0-0 again. The Celtics don't get to carry over any points. They have to start over just like the first 2 games, just like Game 3. And you would think people saying this out loud, well, the Knicks must win Game 3, that someone would say to their face, that's dumb. No, but people just keep nodding along. Game 3 was not a must-win game for the Knicks. It was must-win for the Celtics, but it feels like based on that logic, if the Celtics were to get any win, the Knicks are cooked. They're done. They're washed. So if the Knicks won Game 3, all of a sudden Game 4 was going to be must-win. Can't let the Celtics even win one game. You have to sweep them. Can't allow the Celtics to get going ever. Otherwise, it's doom and gloom for the Knicks. Calm down. What you're really saying by saying that is you clearly don't think the Knicks can win this series, and if one thing goes wrong, they're going to crumble and fall to pieces and fall apart, and it's going to be over. And look, if you feel that way, say it. Put your name on it. Say, I don't think the Knicks have any chance of winning this series. Even up 2-0, they're still going to lose. I think you can come up with a more credible case for even with the way the Knicks won the first 2 games, they weren't in control of the series like a normal 2-0 team would be, based on the fact they led for, 12 minutes of those first 2 games? You can come up with a more credible case for that than saying they have to win Game 3, and if they don't, they're going to lose the series. It's just dumb. All right, so that's the first sub-headline out of the way. The second one is, look, I don't know how this series is going to end up. I hope the Knicks win. I still am confident they can win this series if they go out and play well in game 4. But maybe the Knicks win in 6. Maybe the Celtics win in 6. However it does take place, whoever ends up moving on, however the season ends for the Knicks are not firing Tom Thibodeau. Knicks fans, get this through your head. The Knicks are not firing their head coach. If they lose this series, they're not firing him. If they lose by 20 in every single game, they're not firing him. It's not going to happen. It's not on the table. It is wild how many fans just despise this guy and just will not stop with the talking point. Well, you got to fire Tibbs. You got to fire him. And I'm not saying I agree with all of his decisions or I think he's right 100% of the time, but you guys make it out like he's had no success and they're winning in spite of him. Stop. You may not like it, but you've got to come to grips with the Knicks keeping Tom Thibodeau beyond this year. I heard fans even after game 2 saying who's going to be the coach next year. I can tell you, it's Tibbs. And this is not new. This has been going on from the moment he signed on to be the head coach. You people are out of your mind. There's one thing as a sports fan saying, hey, this is what I would do. And if you want to have that conversation that you would fire Tibbs, okay, fine. Just realize back here on planet Earth, that is not a possibility. We've laid it out before. James Dolan went 20 years with zero stability at head coach and zero results with his team. I find it hard to imagine that Leon Rose is going to see however this season winds up and say, you know what, we got to get rid of the head coach who has been wildly successful from the moment he showed up and far more successful than the last 10 Knicks head coaches. And I would say, if you want to talk about things that are never going to happen, but you'd like to, okay, fine. The Knicks are going to trade for Jokic, or they're going to trade for Giannis, or they're going to get Steph Curry, or they're going to retire Eddie Curry's number, or they're going to bring back Phil Jackson to be the new GM. I mean, whatever you want to, it's all ridiculous. It's not going to happen. Tom Thibodeau is not getting fired after this season by the Knicks. You may not like it, you may not love it, but better deal with it because that is the story. All right, I put it off long enough. Let's get to game 3. As I said in the beginning, that game was gross. The Celtics were hitting everything. The Knicks, they could not hit the broadside of a barn. They looked flat. They looked out of sorts. They played their worst game of the playoffs so far. They could not hit any threes, and it was a rare playoff game where the Knicks never made a run. That just does not happen. I was trying not to panic early on because, a lot of times the first quarter is not really all that important. With the three-point shot being as valuable as it is, nothing really important outside of injury happens in the first quarter or really in the first half. But when you get to the third quarter and it feels like the deficit is just growing and growing and growing, that's not a good look. But look, much like game 1 and 2 for the Celtics, they could play a whole lot better. The Knicks can play a whole lot better than they did in game 3. It was not simply that the Celtics beat the Knicks every which way because they were so much better. The Knicks were terrible on their own right. So to me, the fact that that loss was so disgusting is not the worst case scenario. Because if the Knicks played their best and the Celtics played their best and Boston still won in a rout, that to me would be far more alarming. The Knicks were horrible. It happens. If you paid $10,000 for your seat at Madison Square Garden on Saturday, you probably wish it wouldn't have happened when you were there, but it does happen. It's not an excuse, but it happens. But it's clear the Knicks can play a whole lot better than that, and you'd have to expect they're going to play a whole lot better than that. Plenty of people made it out like the Knicks played like garbage solely because the Celtics were that awesome. The Celtics hit their shots finally, but just like with games 1 and 2, part of it was the Knicks played down the stretch really well, and the Celtics gave those games away. In game 3, the Knicks gave the game away with the fact that they just had no energy and made no runs and didn't play defense and couldn't hit shots, and the Celtics did play their game. So credit the Celtics for their part of it, but the Knicks part of it is not that alarming because I don't think it's going to happen again, and that part of it mostly was on the Knicks. It's not that deep, and it does not carry over to the next game. The Knicks have to play better. I'm sure they know that. I keep seeing that Mitchell Robinson should start, put Josh Hart on the bench. Look, Mitch has been phenomenal in this series. To me, the real issue is the offense for the Knicks. You watch the starters right now, it's not pretty. They're scoring basically 90 points per 100 possessions, and that's not bad. That's prehistoric. That's early 2000s. If the games were ending 79-75, that would be fine, but they're not. And part of this is just shot variance. They're missing some looks they normally hit, but a lot of it is structure. It's spacing. And I love Josh Hart, but against elite defenses, they're daring them to shoot, and you can't run a modern playoff offense with a non-shooter camped out on the perimeter. They're not really focused on him. That shrinks the floor, clogs the lane. I don't know that Mitch necessarily in large doses is going to work out either, though. And when you look at the results, the Knicks have averaged, I think, 52 points in the paint during the regular season. In this series, it's down to 42. That's 10 points right there where they usually are successful, right at the rim. And that's not an accident, but that's what postseason defenses do. It exposes your limitations. It turns good habits into liabilities. So I love the Knick toughness. I love the rebounding. I love the fight. But offensively, to me, that's the number one issue. And everybody wants to make it about Celtics this and Celtics that. For the Knicks, it's simply about them being better. And when you get into individual players who you need to see more from, I'll say this as clearly as I can. If the Knicks want to win this series and not just, hang around and make it competitive and make a good showing, hey, we took Boston to 6, OG Anunoby has got to be more involved. This team is not built to just be Jalen Brunson doing everything all the time, every single game. That's just not sustainable. He's been phenomenal, especially down the stretch, but not against Boston in the playoffs. OG was brought here and paid like a cornerstone to be a two-way difference maker. He's supposed to be the guy who's hitting open threes and cutting to the basket and locking down a wing and gives Brunson some room to breathe. Game 1, that was the OG that you'd take every single day and twice on Sunday. 29 points, efficient, aggressive, confidence. And since that game, he has 7 points total? That's not just underwhelming. That is invisible. You can't be the second highest paid player on the team and go 2 straight playoff games where you can't hit any baskets. And I'm not saying you need OG to score 29 every single night either, but what did he score in the regular season? About 18? You need more of a contribution from him. He has got to be a bigger factor. In the last 2 games, he was a no-show. So look, the good news is the Knicks are still up 2-1. You wouldn't know that if you listen to some of the media covering this. They have game 4 at home, and they still have not played a complete game. When the Celtics didn't play complete games in the first 2, everybody just assumed, well, at some point they're going to. Yeah, of course, they're really, really good. And they played a complete game in game 3. Same goes for the Knicks. They have not played a complete game. I think at some point you're going to see that, and I think there's a good chance it's going to come in game 4. Again, I would be more concerned if the Knicks played this amazing game and still lost by 10. That is not what happened. And I do think that if there was ever going to be a performance that would snap them back into reality and get them to focus and be sharp from start to finish, that game 3 performance would be it. And for the team, maybe have one game where you don't fall behind by 20. Can you have one game where that does not happen? Because if that game is game 4, then I think the Knicks have a pretty good shot to win. And if they win, they go up 3-1. With the Knicks, it always feels like it's darkest before the dawn. They're not front runners. It feels like they do their best work when they're written off, which is crazy because right now they lead the series. But I like that people think that they're on the ropes. I hope the team thinks that they're on the ropes because that's when they do their best work. So yes, there are adjustments to make. Of course, you get back to the ball screen defense you executed actually in games 1 and 2. That would be good. Maybe you get Mitch Robinson in there a little bit earlier to anchor things and slow Boston down in the paint. Those are tweaks, but let's not overthink this and let's stop with the overwhelming panic. Game 3 was Boston at their best, lights out, low turnovers, everything clicking. And the Knicks, yeah, they were at their worst. They were flat, they had no edge, no rhythm, and they couldn't hit a shot. But here's the thing. I don't think that's happening again. Not with this group, not with Brunson, not with the DNA this team has shown all year. They got punched in the mouth, and that happens. Sometimes that's when you bring your best response. I don't think the Knicks are just going to roll over and lose in 6. So yeah, clean up the scheme, tweak the rotation some, but let's not act like this is over. Game 3 was a blowout, but it was also an outlier. Boston hit their ceiling, the Knicks hit their basement. I think the truth is somewhere in the middle, and I think that's what makes this series interesting. Okay, I do want to talk about the Rafael Devers situation in Boston. I find it fascinating and the disaster it has become and how the whole issue really is at the feet of Boston ownership and their front office. So, of course, by now, you know, Red Sox lost their first baseman, Tristan Cassius, for the season. There's been some questions about how do they fill that spot. Rafael Devers had been the Red Sox third baseman until Boston signed Alex Bregman this offseason. When that happened, he moved to DH. So why this story has blown up is because Devers came out on Thursday and said, I'm not playing first base. Flat out refused, told the media this, and he was really critical about how the team had handled the entire situation. And it seems like all the attention in the media has been negative attention, and it's focused solely on Devers, and I think that's not right. All right, so here's how I see this. First off, whether anyone likes it or agrees with it, Rafael Devers is the Red Sox franchise player. He might be a flawed player. He might not be the guy you'd make the franchise player, but there is no question he is the Red Sox franchise player. He's got the 15th largest contract in Major League Baseball currently, and it's the highest contract in the history of the Boston Red Sox organization. Okay, so now for some backstory. That contract was a necessity for their owner, John Henry, because of the way Boston handled the Mookie Betts fiasco back in 2020 and his trade eventually to the LA Dodgers. That was a real turning point for the Red Sox and their ownership and their organization, and I think it kind of ties into where the Red Sox find themselves now. Now, back then, Betts was 27, franchise player, smack dab in the middle of his prime. He was coming off a season where he hit .295, nearly a 400 on base, slugged over 500, 40 doubles, 29 homers, 16 steals, the whole thing. And that was actually considered a down year from his MVP season. That's not the type of guy you trade. That's the kind of guy you build your franchise around. And let's not forget what he did in 2018. 346 average, on base of 438, 32 homers, 30 stolen bases, a WAR of 11. I don't even know what WAR actually is, but I know an 11 is really high. And oh yeah, helped the Red Sox win a World Series. At that point, he was in the conversation as the best player in the sport. And for the Red Sox, that wasn't just talent. That was generational, once-in-a-decade, franchise-altering greatness. And the Red Sox, with all their money and their legacy in the ballpark dripping baseball history, looked at that guy and said, you know what? We're good. This is not Tampa Bay. This is not Oakland or now Sacramento. This is Boston. The Red Sox didn't trade Mookie Betts back then because they had to. They traded him because they chose to. And the Red Sox fans have never forgotten it. They've never let John Henry forget it. That was the moment John Henry gave up pretending he cared about being elite. Now, the Red Sox might tell you he was going to leave anyway. It was just business. That was not a move they had to make. That was a move they chose to make. And since Mookie got traded, that payroll, which was at 237 back in 2019, it has dropped. It dipped to 180 in 2021, and right now this year, it's basically hanging around that same level. So it was not about flexibility. It was not part of some grand retool. The only thing they retooled was their ambitions. Again, you don't trade Mookie Betts. You sign him, you keep him, you build around him, unless, of course, you're more interested in saving money than winning. So the fact that that happened in 2020, when the time it was for Devers to get a contract, he was the guy who landed the franchise-altering deal. And the fact that Boston gave that contract to Devers and not Mookie is mind-boggling. And it was not part of a plan. As Pete Campbell said to Don Draper in Mad Men, don't act like you had a plan. You're Tarzan swinging from vine to vine. It was not that Devers was the right choice for that contract. He was just the only one left for the Red Sox to sign. They couldn't let another homegrown all-star walk out the door. But they had to sign him, so they did. So there's this big aspect of that that's focused on Devers right now and his ego. Oh, he's so entitled. He's not a team player. And look, that might be part of it. Professional athletes do have egos, not exactly a shocker. But part of his ego or his entitlement is the fact the Red Sox made him their franchise player. Highest paid player in the history of the organization. All right, let's go back to this offseason. Devers, the Red Sox star, is a bad fielding third baseman. Some metrics had him as the worst third baseman in the sport, some just really below average. Any way you cut it, he was not good in the field. But this offseason, the Red Sox front office assured Devers he was their third baseman. He was their guy, and they kept telling him that right up until they signed Alex Bregman instead, for him to be the third baseman. So basically, the Red Sox lied to Devers and left him basically to deal with it. So what happened then? A couple days later, Devers is still ticked off. He talks to the media and says, hey, I'm a third baseman. That's my position, so I'm not going to be the DH. There's no argument Bregman is the better defensive third baseman, but when you're dealing with millionaires and egos and guaranteed contracts, you can't just expect in 2025 for a team that's had like one winning season since the Betts trade to simply expect their franchise cornerstone to just do what he's told. There's some politics, there's some finesse, there's some diplomacy in all of this. You tell your franchise cornerstone, hey, you're our guy, right until the moment you sign someone else to play his position. You can't expect him to just be cool with that. The idea that guys at this level, 10 years, $300 million level, are just going to be rah-rah team first all times is really kind of naive. especially when they feel like they've been burned. And that's really an issue for the Red Sox front office. If they thought Devers would be fine being lied to and would just do whatever they said, well, obviously they screwed that up. And if they thought, well, what choice does he have? That's not exactly taking a page from Dale Carnegie, winning friends and influencing people. So look, maybe there's no set of events that could have made Devers cool with this position switch. Maybe he's just such an egomaniac, he was always going to be a problem. Well then, question, why did you sign him to a 10-year contract? Isn't that kind of on ownership? The most important scouting any team in any sport does is scouting their own guys, knowing the strengths and weaknesses and what makes them tick. So again, maybe there's no way this could have been handled perfectly, but it's clear it could have been handled better because it seems pretty clear at this point it couldn't have been handled any worse. And it's clear that Devers' reaction is just that, a reaction. The second part, the first part is the action of the Red Sox management. They botched this from the start. There's no other way to read it. But anywho, Devers eventually agrees to be the DH. And it certainly seems that when that happened, part of the deal was that Devers told the team, okay, I'll move to DH, but I'm only going to be the DH. I'm not going to return to the field. Alex Cora even confirmed that in spring training when he said that if Bregman takes a day off from third, Devers is not going to slide back into third. He's going to focus solely on being the DH. And Devers confirmed that even further on Thursday when he said the club told him in spring training, put your glove away. You don't need it anymore. I don't see how anyone can say the greater blame here is not on the Red Sox organization and their front office. They created this cluster royally from the start when they told Devers one thing and did the other. It might have been a difficult conversation, but instead of going to him and making him maybe part of the solution, they blindsided him. Again, their franchise player. And I definitely think there's a way that they could have gotten him on board. Devers in the past has been critical of the Red Sox front office for not pursuing roster upgrades or adding talent and basically keeping their payroll flat since they traded away Mookie Betts. So now what this Red Sox front office expects is this player to trust them when they handled things the way they did and just move to first base, a position he does not play, and learn the position in the course of the season. The Red Sox want Devers to make up for the fact that the team has no better options based on the plan that they put in place, and for him to take the burden of their poor planning and the Cassis injury. So who gets the blame if he does not pick up the position well right away? Is anyone going to say, well, he tried his best, what can we do? No, all the blame is going to fall on him. Why would he ever do that and take the front office off the hot seat for the team they created? And again, to go back kind of to the beginning of this, the whole situation started because Devers is not a good fielder. He's being moved off third base. Why? He's not good in the field. And third base is a position he's played his entire career. So now we expect him to move to first when he's had no preparation on that and hold it down when he's never played it before. Again, by some measures, he's the worst third baseman in the sport. I feel like I'm taking crazy pills here. I tell my kids, your lack of planning for something is not my emergency. I get that we all want our sports stars to be all about the team and team first and all that. I think in 2025, in professional sports, and really at this level, that's not MLB, that's fantasy baseball. And I know people will say, well, the Red Sox should just trade him. Good luck with that, a $300 million DH. I don't know that teams are going to be lining up for a guy like that. All right, time now for 3 and Out. First up, a TV review. I will be honest with you, since Severance ended, that season was phenomenal. But since that ended, I really haven't been watching that much TV. I was pumped up for The Last of Us on HBO, but since that big plot twist in the second episode, I'll save the spoiler in case you haven't seen it. But as soon as that plot twist came up, I was like, all right, that's it. I'm out. Great TV shows. The thing about great TV shows is it's a balance between great plot, but also characters that you actually care about. And that second part is the hardest part, writing people and characters that you actually are worried about or you want to see how their story comes about. The reason why great TV shows are that is you care what happens to Walter White or Tony Soprano or Jimmy McNulty or whoever. That's why a show like Ozark is not a great show. It had great plot twists. Oh my goodness, what happened? But I didn't care about any of the characters. I didn't care if they lived or died. And in fact, by the end, I was kind of hoping that they were going to be killed off so I could go about do something else with my life. And The Last of Us had 2 characters that you actually cared about. And they killed off. Oh, sorry. Probably shouldn't have said. Spoiler alert. They killed off one of them. I didn't say which one. So by now you probably know. And boy, does it seem like that show went downhill fast after, like really downhill, like off a cliff. For you to have zombies in your show and it's still kind of boring is a really bad sign. But I digress. The TV show that I watched and was super entertaining, it was a documentary. It's on Netflix called A Deadly American Marriage. It just came out over the weekend. I like documentaries because it makes me sound smart when I say I saw this documentary. It's like 90 minutes. It's not one of those, oh, it's 7 episodes, but really could be wrapped up in 3 episodes. No, 90 minutes start to finish. Interesting, infuriating, compelling to watch. I'll leave you fresh. I want you to go in fresh. I don't want to give anything away. So I'll just say, again, the name of it is A Deadly American Marriage on Netflix. Also, there's another, now that I think of it, another documentary on Netflix titled A Body in the Snow, The Trial of Karen Reed. It's on Max or HBO or whatever why they decided to call it Max instead of HBO, that infuriates me because HBO actually had a brand. What is Max? That's nothing. But in terms of that documentary on the Karen Reed case, I think it makes it really clear that she absolutely did it. But you watch, if you don't know anything about that case, I can't imagine you haven't heard about it at all. But it should be absolutely checked out, that documentary. Really fascinating on that case outside of Boston. All right, number 2, the NBA draft lottery is tonight, Monday night. The NFL, by the way, completely missing out on the lottery. Could you imagine if the NFL, the content of fans watching their team that had this miserable season, and now they're going to find out where they're picking in the draft. The NFL is completely dropping the ball on this. And they would love this. They could sell this to another one of those streaming services you have to download. I got to download Crackle tonight so I can see the draft lot. I got to download Tubi or whatever the heck the stupid things are. I'm a big believer the NBA draft should be decided in sports court. You should have to plead your case as an organization why you should get the number 1 pick. And if you've had the number 1 pick a bunch, or if you're constantly in the lottery and you suck every single year, a place nobody wants to be, that should count against you in sports court. So I am going to go through the teams that are in the lottery and tell you who should get the number 1 pick, because this year the number 1 pick actually matters because it's going to be Cooper Flagg. So the teams that are automatically eliminated don't even have to present a case. It's no contest. Go to the back of the line. 76ers, you're completely out. You tanked for a decade and really got nothing. You got Embiid basically out of it. They had pick after pick after pick. The whole trust the process, it was a disaster. They got basically nothing out of it. No NBA finals appearance, no conference finals appearance. So no, you're not getting another number 1 pick. You're out. New Orleans Pelicans, you're out. You got Zion. Nobody wants to play there. If you get Cooper Flagg, it's just going to be 3 years, and then he's going to be looking for a trade someplace else. Why waste the 3 years? Pelicans, you're gone. The Spurs, absolutely. Nobody has gotten better lottery luck in the history of all sports than the Spurs. You are not getting Cooper Flagg too. You got Wemby. You got Tim Duncan. Absolutely not. Eliminated. Dallas Mavericks traded Luka. Gone. You should not get bailed out of bad decisions by the bouncing of a ping pong ball. Atlanta Hawks, surprisingly, you won the lottery last year. I have no recollection of this whatsoever. I'm starting to worry about myself because that only happened a year ago and I don't remember it. Hawks, you're out. All right, so then we get down to the teams where they're not an automatic elimination, but they get eliminated pretty quickly. Wizards, they've been in the lottery the last 5 years. It feels like they're in the lottery every single year. I don't trust you to not screw this up, so no, you're out. Brooklyn Nets. At first I thought, well, give Brooklyn something. No, it's no good. It's just a waste of time. Nobody is watching Brooklyn. Nobody's focused on Brooklyn. The town is completely Knicks. It's wasting Cooper Flagg, so Brooklyn, sorry. Chicago Bulls, you had Jordan, you tore it down voluntarily. You've won the lottery a couple of times. You won with the Derrick Rose year. I think you won in like 98 or 99. Absolutely not. Bulls, you're gone. All right, so that leaves 5 teams. Hornets, they won the lottery once, but they are in the lottery every year. They've not made the playoffs in forever. I don't want to waste the pick. By the way, I was doing research on this. Do you remember Larry Brown coaching the Hornets? I have zero memory of that either. Where was I when this was going on? The Hornets, when they were created, They had a run with Alonzo Mourning, obviously, and Larry Johnson. But since then, man, it's been lean down there. And I don't trust them to get this right, even with something that is a slam dunk like Cooper Flagg. So I'm not rewarding them for incompetence. Next up is Toronto. I don't want to be forced to live in another country. Like, would you, if you were an NBA player, would you want to have to be forced to, you can be an NBA player, but you have to live in Canada. I don't know. It just doesn't feel right. I don't want to be forced to live in another country. Raptors, you're gone. So that leaves us with three teams, the Rockets, the Jazz, and the Trailblazers. The Rockets, they have something going on. And if they got the rights to Cooper Flagg, they could really turn into something. But I feel like that's kind of short-circuiting what they've built down there and kind of giving them a free pass that they didn't necessarily deserve. And as a Knicks fan, having lost the Rockets in '94, I don't want the Rockets to have, they had their championships. They had Hakeem Olajuwon, enough already, eliminated. So that brings us down to the Jazz and the Trailblazers. At first, when I thought about this, I thought I would be good with either one of those teams. But then it dawned on me, oh, wait, who runs the Utah Jazz? Danny Ainge. Enough with Danny Ainge. This guy is lucked into enough things. He's not getting Cooper Flagg as well. Now that I say that, they probably will end up getting Cooper Flagg. But no, the Utah Jazz, you are eliminated. So the Portland Trailblazers, in the lottery only 3 times in the last decade. They've not tanked. I think they deserve a break. They deserve a foundational piece since Damian Lillard moved on. The Portland Trailblazers, congrats. You get Cooper Flagg. See how easy that was? All right, then finally, I got a comment on my Substack, the podcast episode about Aaron Judge and Barry Bonds. My Substack is Gordon Damer on Sports. Richard Hughes commented that he was wondering if I thought about the arguments that try to minimize the effects of PEDs in baseball, that the more he investigates the subject, he doesn't really find it that controversial at all, and he thinks that Bonds and his accomplishments should be celebrated and not disparaged. Well, Richard, first off, thanks for the comment. I guess it depends on what you mean by disparage and celebrate. Look, I readily admit, and I said it in that episode, the best hitter we all ever saw was Barry Bonds during that 4-year span when he was juicing in San Francisco. He was the greatest hitter that existed up until that point, and he's the greatest hitter who will ever exist. But you can't point that out and then not point out how it was accomplished, because he was at an age where every athlete starts slowing down, and yet he was picking up speed. And I get it. I understand his motivation. I understand what he was dealing with. He saw what was happening around him, McGuire and Sosa turning baseball into home run carnival. The league loved it. Fans were buying tickets. The stands were packed. Reporters looked the other way. And Bonds, who was already on a Hall of Fame trajectory, he was already a lock Hall of Famer with 3 MVPs, looked around and said, all right, look, if this is what I have to do to keep up, fine. I understand that. I really do. It's human. He's competitive. It's what happens when you're the best. And all of a sudden, the playing field tilts in the favor of the artificial. And he wanted to stay on top. He wanted to stay dominant. He wanted to stay a legend. And he obviously absolutely did. And he didn't want to be remembered as, hey, he was great until the rules kind of changed without ever admitting it. So I get it. But here's the thing. I understand the why, but that doesn't give him a pass on the what. If it was 99, 2000, I don't really remember, but Bonds didn't just get better. He became a video game. He turned into something beyond belief. So he was the greatest clean, and the separation between him and second place dirty was even greater. But I can't celebrate that version of Barry Bonds. I won't glorify what he did. I won't pretend that there's no asterisk. So if you go to the Hall of Fame, I'm sure there's jerseys or bats or all different artifacts of Barry Bonds. So he is kind of technically in the Hall of Fame, even though he has not gotten a day to celebrate him. And I don't have a problem with not celebrating somebody who knew what he was doing and decided to do it anyway. As I've said before, you don't get to make the deal with the devil and then complain about the heat. Now, if he gets into the Hall of Fame, I'm not going to show up with some oak tag and a stick and protest. But sitting here, I'm not going to pretend it didn't happen, and I'm not going to celebrate and glorify it. But thanks for the comment. All right, that's going to do it for another edition. Please, if you've not already, please hit the subscribe button, hit the like episode, comment on the episode on my Substack, Gordon Damer on Sports. You can comment there as well. Who knows? Maybe I'll use it on a future episode. And again, you can find me on Twitter at Gordon Damer. We'll be back later this week with another edition of Gordon Damer on Sports.